Very good. Welcome all. Take two. Welcome all to this study group SE book club, um, chapters 1 and 2. So this is the first. Chapters 1 is more of an introduction, so we're not going to make a separate one for it, which means that we expect to get through this book in about 6 weeks. We'll let you know. If it takes longer, it takes longer. Today we're going to cover chapters 1 and 2 of Impossible Conversations. This is the textbook for SE as far as I'm concerned. If you don't have another book about street epistemology, this one's going to be enough. I think it is a complete replacement for the original book by Dr. Peter Boghossian, A Manual for Creating Atheists. I think this one is a little bit slimmer. It's really better edited. Maybe James Lindsay is really good at it. Interesting. And contains all of the good stuff that's in the first one. So here goes. Outline of the book. In the doobly-doo and in the Collab SE text, you'll find a document that are my notes that I'm working from. And those same notes will be for the whole 6 weeks-ish of this book club. Welcome, audience. This is a book club where you are welcome if you didn't read the book. If you watch this series, I hope to provide at least a summary understanding of the book just from it. If you don't end up reading it yourself, there's lots of advantage to reading the book yourself. My edit is probably going to be about a 10% word count relative to the book, and I hope to give you about a third of the value of the book. Obviously, I'm leaving a lot. In section 1, Dr. Boghossian is an asshole. I don't mean in general, but just in this example. He shows a discussion where both he and his conversation partner come at each other with an agenda, persuade each other to their position. I have a volunteer to do this with me. Let's see. No, I can't. Gigi, are you able to speak?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. Please play the role of SDL. I will play Peter Boghossian.
You keep denying that affirmative action is fair.
Yeah, that's because it's not. Who's it fair to?
I told you already, traditionally marginalized groups like African Americans, they're coming from a deficit. They didn't have the same opportunities that you and I had.
But why does that require manufacturing outcomes?
You sound like a broken record. Because they're Americans and they deserve better. You don't understand because you've never had those struggles. You've gone to good schools and never dealt with even a fraction of what they deal with on a daily basis.
Oh, okay. Let's say you're right. I don't think you are, but let's say you are. What evidence do you have that affirmative action is a way to remedy past injustices?
I don't have any evidence. It's the right thing to do because...
So you have no evidence. You have complete confidence in a belief for which you have no evidence.
You're not listening.
I am listening. I'm trying to figure out how you could believe so strongly in something with no evidence. Do you think African Americans are better off with Clarence Thomas? Do you think it was a good thing that he's a Supreme Court justice? Or would African Americans be better off with a liberal white male?
You're so annoying. Seriously, I can't believe you're a teacher.
I'm sorry you feel that way. Maybe if you could better defend your beliefs, you wouldn't be so annoyed with someone who's asking you softball questions.
What do you teach your students?
You're not my student, and don't get so upset.
You're an asshole. We're done.
Thank you. This conversation happened 2 decades ago. Since that time, we have become far more polarized. The good news is that Dr. Boghossian and several thousand street epistemologists have been working on a conversational method to try and communicate effectively across tribal lines. These are impossible conversations. Impossible conversations are those that could not be productive if left to the usual ways we talk. Beliefs can change. There are good ways and there are bad ways. Conversation is a good way. Force is a bad way because force is ineffective, and it's usually people's default intuitive response to respond with facts and arguments. What can be done? That's what we will explore in this book. In this book, we will cover 36 techniques drawn from the best, most effective research on applied epistemology, hostage and professional negotiations, cult exiting, subdisciplines of psychology, and more. The author's advice is to take time with each chapter before moving on to the next. More advanced chapters will build on earlier techniques. They, and we, urge you to not skip ahead, but to review this book systematically and sequentially. We will practice and model the techniques chapter by chapter and show by show. That was all for the first chapter. That was the introduction. Section 2, fundamentals. Now, what kind of goals do we want in these conversations? The authors list 6: reaching mutual understanding, learning from each other, finding truth, intervention, impressing people. That could get you a date, maybe? Or yielding to coercion. Does anybody in the audience have any thoughts about these goals? Do these seem like good goals for us to set up in our conversations? Are we missing some important ones? Not hearing anybody. Okay. Nobody has a thought on this. We'll just continue. Partnerships. Peter's mentor, Dr. Wesley, investigated prisoners of war that defected to North Korea during the Korean War. Almost all of the defectors came from one training camp where they were taught that the North Koreans were heartless barbarians that sought U.S. destruction. When they were shown kindness, their training unraveled. I'm assuming that people might have examples of claims like, in this case, the claim was that North Korean soldiers were all barbarians, or maybe even everybody in there really, really anti-American. It was easy for them to overcome the resistance built into the soldiers by just being kind, normal, and human. Are there examples that you know of, like people on the opposite end of your spectrum, where you would not pay any attention to their input? I'm not hearing it.
Hello?
Hello. Yes.
Yeah, this might be tangential, but so like it
Yeah.
kind of reminds me of like when I was in health class, right? They
Mhm.
taught kids all these things about marijuana, and some of
Mhm.
them were just scare tactics. And
Mhm.
what ended up happening with a lot of them was that once they found out that some of these little things weren't true, they kind of threw away all of the information on it and just said,
Yeah.
"Well, how should I trust anything the teacher says, right? Maybe they're lying
Exactly.
about all of it." When in truth, they were only lying about some of it. But it kind of like
Yep.
made them throw the baby out the bathwater. That's all I had to say.
Yeah. Exactly. My own most important example of that would be at around 20. The young Earth creationism of my parents was just impossible to swallow, and I threw everything about Christianity out except for a kind of liberal, fluffy Christianity that said, "Hey, the Ten Commandments are probably a great idea," but the rest of it's like,
Right.
yeah, yeah. The way to change minds is through kindness, compassion, empathy, and treating people with respect and dignity. How can I switch from seeing people as opponents, degenerates, or even enemies? By changing my goals from winning to understanding. You may be saying to yourself, I can talk to a lot of people like a partner, but I couldn't do that with a racist. Yes, you can. If the black musician Daryl Davis can have civil conversations with Klansmen and help them abandon the KKK, and he has a whole closet full of relinquished hoods to show it. then you can talk to a racist and discover why they believe what they believe. You can stand it. On a personal note, on the weekends, I do public events on Discord servers that are very open to all viewpoints, as long as the discussion is polite. I regularly speak with alt-right, communists, anarchists, fundamentalists, flat earthers, trans and other sexual minorities, anti-trans activists, MAGA hatters, social justice activists, feminists of all stripes, men's rights activists, and many other people whose views make them monsters in someone's eyes. As long as I'm willing to hear them out, they don't expect me to be convinced by their argument. That I'm not attacking them or calling for tar and pitchforks might be the best rapport they've had in a while from anyone. The mark of an educated mind, it has been said, is to understand a statement without having to accept it. This is my constant internal reminder when I am interrogating an SE, Olympus. Jargon alert. Olympus is what we call that Q&A session that SE is built around. At worst, you will have to endure hearing something truly vile, in which case you will come away from the conversation with a better understanding of why people hold repugnant beliefs. You or I cannot control our interlocutor's behaviors. We can only control our own. If there is going to be no pushback, it has to be the interrogator, the one asking questions that steers the conversation, that is the one to not push back. Make your goals explicit. For example, I really want to understand what led you to those conclusions. Always get clear consent. Always allow an opt-out at any time without prejudice. This includes after the fact about publishing. Like if we're doing this and I have even a live stream with somebody and they say, no, take that down. I will take that down. Rapport. I would like a female volunteer. I already have Lost in Space, who says they can do a decent Anthony Magnavosco impression. This is on pages 14 and 15 of the book.
Anybody else?
Lost, can you hear me?
Yeah. I got the book.
Okay, you got the book. And Gigi, do you want to do the carry line?
Yeah, sure. I could step in here again.
Great. Go ahead. Lost
Wait.
and
Does this start with
Gigi.
This is starting with navigating social media, page 50.
Sorry, I'm looking at page 14 of How to Have Impossible Conversations. If you like, you can just read from the screen.
Okay.
If you're in Discord, you can double click on the screen, the one that's going out to YouTube.
Okay. Page 14. I'm on it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you want me to go now?
Yeah, read the AM part. You said you do an impression, and that's fine.
Okay.
And read the AM part. That's Anthony Magnavosco. Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning. How are you? Hold on.
That's fine.
Good morning. How are you? Would you happen to have 5 minutes for a chat?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Are you okay if I live stream and record it?
Okay. And what's it about?
Excellent question. I have conversations with strangers for 5 minutes
Okay.
to see what they believe and why.
Okay.
And it's fun.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Should I take my sunglasses off?
Whatever you prefer, whatever you're more comfortable with.
All right. Okay.
What's your first name?
Harry.
I'm Anthony.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you too. How do I spell that?
Kari.
Okay. Do you hike out here a lot?
Yes.
Awesome. I come here a couple of times, but it's usually with my kids, so I can't go as fast as I want to.
Exactly. I usually come here with my kids.
Yeah, they slow you down.
Yeah.
Did you cruise through pretty fast or?
Actually, this is the first time I came by myself, and so it was fun just to go do something harder.
Okay, well, good.
Okay, I'm a little impressed.
How was that?
That was well toward the end. That was pretty good. I'm going to go back and look at the original video from Anthony and play it back with
I've
this
been practicing.
because some of those lines, I'd almost believe you. That was really good. And Gigi, you were good too. But I'm talking about lost impression. That was pretty good.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
Okay.
I'm glad you liked it.
Thank you,
That was
Lost.
fun.
Okay. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
In those 2 minutes, Anthony built enough rapport so that Kari felt comfortable talking with a stranger about her personal beliefs. The more the two people diverge in their stances, the more important it is to build rapport. In my own practice of SE, I score an Olympus as a win or a passing grade if my conversation partner is willing and interested to have further conversations when and if it's convenient. It doesn't matter if I've reached any other goals in the Olympus. I don't even have to have established a claim. If the rapport worked well enough that we can have another conversation, that's a passing grade to me. That was time well spent. That's my own personal perspective. Ask sincere questions, those that you actually want to know the answers to. These don't have to be answers you already think you know. You might already have reason to assume the answer. You might even have a high probability of predicting their answer. You may still want to know what they say their answer is. It doesn't make sense to ask a question that you wouldn't actually want the answer to. It makes it really hard to actually listen to it. Start with rapport. Do not jump right to the substantive heavy points immediately. Rapport is first and more important. Ask them to introduce themselves. If this is to be published, even if you know them well, this is useful to the audience. And listening to people when they are describing themselves builds rapport, even in those conditions. Find common ground. If it seems you have no common interests, one of you is Star Trek, the other one's Star Wars, there's nothing common there, right? I said Star Trek, Star Wars, whatever it is. You know what I meant. Almost everyone shares the same impulse for doing good. You might not agree on the means or even the specific goal. You both want better lives for yourselves and your community. We often have a different opinion about how to get to better, but we all want better. A few exceptions we'll talk about. Avoid parallel talk. That's when the interrogator brings up their own experience doing the same thing the interlocutor just brought up. The example given in the book is somebody says, I had a trip to Cuba. Oh, yeah, let me tell you about my trip to Cuba. That's not great. This changes the subject away from the interlocutor's experience to the interrogator's experience. Relationship before politics. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Okay, yes, that's a platitude, but it's a good one. Only start an Olympus if you have time and attention for it. If I wake up more than a little grumpy, I cancel the show. It's not going to work out. Be willing that they change the subject. Don't get stuck on, but I had a goal to talk to you about this, the thing, which thing. And you're not, and don't do that. let them go. Again, even if you don't make any of the other goals of your Olympus, if you have a rapport at the end, they can have talked about their dog. That's okay. Don't call out their bullshit, except for severe infraction. Kind of a weird exception. I'm going to leave it to you to figure out what a severe infraction is. Here on YouTube, that number would be different than if we're shooting beers in a bar. Okay. What a severe infraction is just something that I'm not even going to figure that out. Not up to me. Be courteous and polite. It's a good habit anyway. It's free and it works. Overall, listen. Let them talk first. If you forget what you were going to say, that's fine. Look directly at them. See what the camera's at. Look directly at them. Face them with your own body language. Don't fake listening. Actually focus. This might mean that you miss those snappy comebacks, and learn to enjoy the pause. Later, we'll talk about aporia, the honoring of the pause. Do not finish their sentences. At most, if they are searching for a term and you're pretty sure you know it, you can offer, but that's all. This is not a race to some finish line. If they take a while to finish their thought, that's good for them and for rapport. Pause. This is weird in Western cultures where time is money and people fight for attention. Don't jump in. Let them have all the time they want. Think about what you are saying. Sorry. Let them have all the time they want to think about what they are saying. Take the time yourself. It is a good way to model that slow, deliberate thinking is welcome. If there is a distraction, ignore it or call it out and return to the Olympus. Unless, of course, there is a genuine reason like an emergency or you have a responsibility to something. You don't just let it go. Although mostly you should probably be setting up Olympuses in areas where emergencies aren't likely or that you don't have other responsibilities going on. We don't need to put undue restrictions. If you don't understand, take the blame for not understanding on yourself. Say, I didn't follow. Could you expand on X? Do not say, you did that poorly. Please try again. If you detect fear, frustration, anger, outrage, disgust, note the words. Note the words that you said just before then. Maybe you'll figure out different words. Maybe it was just trigger words. Maybe it was something they thought. Maybe you don't know. That's okay. Just be sensitive to it. And acknowledge the feelings as soon as practical in the conversation. I hear your frustration. I get it. That's tough. That's a drag. If you tune out or you get distracted, don't hide it. Just say, I'm sorry, please repeat. If you are getting consistently distracted, it's probably time to end the Olympus. If you talk over each other and then you let them talk, avoid just using the same words that you said that got stepped on, because you give them the impression that you were just waiting for your turn to speak and weren't really listening to what they said. It's much better if you respond to what they most recently said than the thing one or two back. Don't check your tech in an Olympus. None of this. Especially to fact check their claims. That's really what I mean about don't check your phone or don't look it up on Google. That's a lot like having a position and saying, here's some, give me your email address so I can spam you. I break this rule a lot on this show because I'm watching for audience questions down here and I'm reading my outline over there. I am careful to edit when I'm talking from the Collab SE text. I'm careful to edit out things that are arguments against the person, but I'm having to read a lot and be open to the audience. And that's a little different from SE in that what we're doing in this kind of a live situation when we're examining somebody and taking questions from the audience, we're actually doing a collaborative process. So it's a little bit different. And that's really the only reason I should be teching my tech is for the collaboration part, not because I'm willing to show a new perspective or other kinds of. Say, I hear you. It works. Shoot the messenger. Now, this is odd. This usually is something we would want to avoid in general life. Don't shoot the messenger is what we say. But in our case, we're talking about shooting the messengers within ourselves. Shooting those urges to bring up points that you know are just in opposition to your partner's position. Somebody told me yesterday, bite your tongue. Don't say the thing that you are burning to say. Anthony says, don't take the bait. Don't bite the red meat. It's all different ways of saying avoid pushing your own direct messages. That's the kind of thing that makes these conversations impossible. And that's what we need to avoid. I've heard from many practitioners that learning to shoot the messenger, to avoid sending direct messages from themselves, is the hardest part of learning to do straight epistemology well. Direct messaging does not change minds. Me personally, I'm guessing that everyone that could be convinced by direct messaging is already holding an extreme position that comes with protections against further direct messaging. So if somebody's in a religion, usually those religions have protections against don't listen to that other religion. They're wrong because something, and they're pedos or something. Lots and lots of ways to edit out all the direct messaging that would counter their own set of beliefs. Shoot your own messages. Shoot your own messengers. I guess it's shoot your own messages as well. And not your partners. The interlocutor does not have this kind of rule. The interlocutor only has the rule of let's stay kind and polite, maybe. That's about all that they're required to do. If they're not kind and polite, you might need to opt out. We'll get to that. If you don't like the idea of shooting your messengers, imagine shooting them with a Canon camera and then asking them to stand over there for a group portrait and then wait till after the Olympus to apply again to be spoken. If your interlocutor specifically asks, lol, yes, yes, switch from broadcast mode to receive mode. Hell yes, Ragnar, that's exactly right. If your interlocutor specifically asks for one of your messengers, allow them through with all care not to damage rapport, and then get back to listening. I usually ask once that they would delay me telling them my position or my opinions on the thing until step 7 in my chart. That I open up to answering their questions, and I usually ask once that they would let me delay, and oftentimes they will. And if they insist, I relent. I only ask once to delay. May I have 2 volunteers to render the dialogue between Socrates and Mino? I'll put it up on. Let's see. Not the wrong. I think that's the right one. In the orange book, this is on page 25 and 26. Do I have 2 volunteers to play Socrates and Mino? If not, I have my husband standing by. He's okay, Foil, you're up. You got your glasses?
Got him.
You got him. Okay. Some cans. I'm going to put headphones on him, and he's just going to come through my setup. Give me a mic check. Feel all right?
It's good to me.
Seems good to him. Indeed. Okay, here we go. Do you want Socrates or Mino?
That doesn't matter.
I'll start with Socrates. I'll be Socrates. Do you think some men desire bad and others good? Doesn't everyone, in your opinion, desire good things?
No.
And would you say that others suppose bad things to be good, or do they still desire them, although they recognize them as bad? What? Do you really think that anyone who recognizes bad things for what they are nonetheless desires them?
Yes.
Desires in what way? To possess them?
Of course.
In the belief that bad things bring advantage to their possessor or harm?
Some in the first belief, but some also in the second.
And do you believe that those who suppose bad things bring advantage understand that they are bad?
No, that I can't really.
Isn't it clear then that this class who don't recognize bad things for what they are, don't desire bad, but what they think is good, though in fact it is bad? Those who through ignorance mistake bad things for good obviously desire their own good?
For them, I suppose that is true.
Now, for those whom you speak of as desiring bad things in the belief that they do harm to their possessor, these presumably know that they will be injured by them?
They must.
And don't they believe that whoever is injured is, insofar as he is injured, unhappy
That too they must believe.
and unfortunate?
Yes.
Well, does anybody want to be unhappy and unfortunate?
I suppose not.
Then if not, nobody desires what is bad, for what else is unhappiness but desiring bad things and getting them?
It looks as if you are right, Socrates, and nobody desires what is bad.
Thank you. People do not knowingly desire bad things. Many assume that liberals aren't patriotic, that conservatives are racist, that Republicans don't care about poor people, and the Democrats are weak on defense. Then they falsely assume that these shortcomings inform their values. Assuming your partner has malicious intentions stifles your conversation. It halts cooperation and undermines the possibility of using the conversation to arrive at truth. You might even come off snarky. People don't knowingly desire bad things, the exceptions being psychopaths and internet trolls. That'll be covered in the 7th chapter. If we're on schedule, that will be the 6th session of this Wednesday series. If they think you have bad intentions, don't defend it, just be willing to understand why they think so. If you think they have bad intentions, don't call them on it. Be curious and try to understand why they want what they seem to want. If you are frustrated, admit it without making it their fault. And last, don't feed the trolls. You may opt out of an Olympus just like your interlocutor. Don't be pressured into having a conversation. Consent goes both ways. Then the section, Walk Away. Dialogue on page 29. May I have a volunteer to play the LA fan role? Anybody willing to step up and play LA fan? Kimberly, you're hired. I'm playing Peter Boghossian, the asshole from the first section. I just don't get it. The players on the team aren't even from LA, right?
Well, yeah.
Where are they from?
He's from New York. He's from Boston.
Okay, I got it. If they were from LA, then I could totally understand why you'd be a fan, right? I mean, they'd be from here, and there'd be a kinship and familiarity and such, yeah?
Well, yeah, but they're my team. This is my city. I love LA.
Who doesn't? Great place. But the team is filled with people who aren't from here.
But they play for the city. They play for us. So when they win, we win.
Would you feel more intensely about the Lakers if every team member was from LA?
What do you mean?
I mean, if every single player on the team was born and raised in Los Angeles, would you feel more strongly? Would you be more connected to the team?
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. I think so.
So shouldn't you be less enthusiastic and connected given that they are not from LA? I mean, you'd be more enthusiastic if they are from LA. Then shouldn't you be less enthusiastic because they're not? Peter writes, at this point, I should have ended the conversation on a light note. I should not have moved on to my second goal of changing his team preference. Exit stage left. Pushing beyond comfort into defensiveness will ruin any progress you have made. Defensive people double down and experience a backfire effect. People need time to deeply consider before they can change their beliefs. Mostly this happens between Olympus, not during. Quit while you're ahead and on a positive note. The last section, how to end a conversation. Politely thank them for the conversation and tell them you enjoyed it if that is true. Don't lie about it if you actually didn't enjoy it, but maybe just the process of street epistemology can be enjoyable, even if the conversation seems like it's full of all sorts of crap and whatever. I still enjoy SEs, even when they are contentious, even when they're difficult, even when they're challenging. I still enjoy it. So I'm almost always honestly able to say, thank you for the conversation. I think there is a flaw in the book on page 31. This list is how to end a conversation, and there are 5 items in it, and 2 of them are really repeats of politely thank them for the conversation and tell them you've enjoyed it. So it doesn't quite make sense. And the other 3 are anger and frustration, the need for a break to breathe and reset, and the last, probably the more important one. If your interlocutor has had any significant shift in their beliefs, they need time to think about it before more gets piled on. Most people remember best what was said last. I think those other 3 are about when and why, not about how. So if there's a flaw, it's really just in the title of the list, not in the contents of the list. I think it's just mislabeled. Now I'd like to open it to the room for practice and role play. The authors want us to practice these ideas, and I have 7 things I'd like to ask for. May I have volunteers to role play with me or others? Expressing goals for an Olympus. Can somebody give me an example of how they would say they express their goals for an Olympus? If you have an interrogator, if you have an interlocutor, what would you tell them your goals are? Let me make sure everybody's unmuted. Gigi, do you have a...
I think the main goal for the Olympus would be to find out what they believe and why.
Okay, So give me an example of telling me that your goal is to know what I believe and why. You can just repeat what I said.
I'd like to know what you believe and why.
Excellent example. Good. Anybody else? Any other ways that you could say the goals of your street epistemology? Okay.
I would like to understand how you
Yes.
think.
I like that. Understand how you think. That is great. Okay. So next thing, role play a good example of partnership language and a bad example. So I want both good and bad language. Any ideas?
How could we figure this out?
I like that. That's good partnership language. Anybody have an adversarial?
You don't know what you're saying.
That, yes. That's very direct. Good. Go ahead.
Test.
I don't know why you think like that.
Mm-hmm.
You hear me?
Yeah. I don't know why. Go ahead. I hear you.
I just wanted to say I would like to know how you think that way of answering that question. I've noticed in my personal life that people get very defensive when you ask that question. I don't know why that is. I was just throwing that out there.
Interesting. So people get defensive if you say, I'd like to know how you think.
I think they feel as though they're being judged on how they're thinking. You know, like it becomes like they're trying to prove themselves and they get very quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that is actually the challenge in being an interlocutor is actually defending your claims. And that's what I think a lot of people shy away from in this. Not sure if there's a way around that one. That might be just the cost of the conversation.
Maybe, but I've noticed, and I've only known you a few days now, but in the way that you deliver it, it doesn't feel like you're interrogating them. It feels like they're actually just expressing, like you've actually expressed interest, but you're not actually judging what they say. You know what I mean? I'm saying that question kind of like makes them think that you are judging them from the outset. I'm just not sure that's a great way to start it.
Yeah, it would have to be something that comes after rapport for a bit.
Yeah,
I think once you've established rapport, that literal exact text will be heard differently.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Like, it depends on your relationship with the person. So,
indeed. Any other thoughts? I hear in text, adversarial is figure it out, and conditionals and subjective always sound more. Sorry, conditionals and subjectives always sound more polite. Avoid the indicative clause when possible. I think I remember what those were, but could you give me an example of what indicative clause? Can somebody tell me what an indicative clause example would be? Oh, subjunctive type. Okay, conditionals and subjunctive always sound.
Yeah, sorry. Indicative.
I have to go back to English class. I'm not sure I could tell you examples of what those mean.
Yeah, sorry. Indicative is like a matter of fact phrase. So like X is this way, Y is that way. Subjunctive is like expressing doubt, recommendation, things like that. So words like would, could, those tend to be conditionals and subjunctives. But the idea is like try not to state bold facts. Don't use so like that phrase figure it out, that's an imperative, right? Yeah. That's basically commanding them to think or feel something, as opposed to in a conditional or a subjunctive, you're like posing hypotheticals or like you're kind of guessing. That's a good way to say the subjunctive. You're kind of guessing how they feel so that like if you get it wrong, it's more humbling. Like it might just be, oh, everyone makes mistakes. You didn't mean to guess wrong. So I think it's just more disarming. Yeah, I'm gonna mute up though.
And it's even better if you use the conditionals in a question.
Yes, conditionals and hypotheticals. I'm a big fan of those. Okay. Next examples: active listening, and the alternative is changing the subject to yourself. If I were to say blah 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 blah, and my dog is the best dog, can somebody? What would be the active listen? How would you tell me that you heard me? Well, quietness is good listening.
I guess I would ask further about what about your dog? You know, maybe more
Okay.
information about why you feel that way.
Good. And now if I'm talking about my dog, what would be an example of changing the subject to yourself? My dog. Oh, I have the best dog. Here's your...
My dog is better. Or my cat is better in this case, or my pet.
Indeed. Thank you.
Or just, well, speaking about dogs.
Yes, a segue, a direct segue. Yeah, good. That's good in a news show and sucks in NSE. Okay. Examples of shooting messengers. Now, it seems like shooting messengers is like the quietest thing I could do. So maybe I need to give you an obvious wrongness, and if you stay quiet, you've shot the messenger. Well, Hitler had some really good ideas. We should follow his example, General, because he was a wallpaper hang.
That's interesting. How did you come to that conclusion?
Oh, beautiful. Well done, Ragnar. And what would be an example of a direct message in that case?
Hitler
that
was
would not be
horrible.
shooting them. Yes, Hitler was horrible. Exactly. And even worse, you are a horrible person for thinking that Hitler was okay. You are a Nazi. You must be a Nazi. Yeah.
So by shooting the messenger, you're saying to shoot the impulse down to
Yes.
dive deeper into that. What do you do?
Exactly.
Do you have any recommendations on, or have heard anything about, what if you have way too many messengers? Do you know what I mean? Like I get flooded with messengers sometimes, depending on the topic. Do you have an idea of how to get yourself under control in that situation?
Breathe.
Aporia, I take a moment. It's like sometimes they've hit me with a gish gallop of this and that and the other. And I'm just like, hang on just a moment. Let me see if I can absorb that. And I am trying to remember everything they said. I'm literally going like, all right, you said Nazis, you said white supremacy, and you also said black pride and all lives matter. And okay, and I'm just going through these and I have all these things I want to push back on. And I distract myself into just categorizing, just seeing if I can count off on my fingers the different claims they made. And then I can mirror that back to them. Okay, so I hear that you think Hitler was great and that cis white males should rule the world. And of course, all lives matter, and you don't see why that's maybe not the best response, or maybe that's why, and so on. So I can give them reflections back, and some of that time I'm literally just sorting through going, no.
Yeah.
No.
I like that a lot, actually. That's, I'm gonna have to employ that. I like the reflecting back at them. What they've done.
Reflecting back really helps.
Yeah, and
Because
in your mind,
instead of saying the thing I don't want to say, I can at least say one thing I do want to say.
and in your mind, you can actually think about, my focus here is to understand, not to refute.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Exactly. Internet trolling. Can you give me an example of acting like an internet troll with emphasis on pressure to have conversation beyond consent? Can you pressure me into having a conversation?
So could you repeat that?
I'd like you to get somebody to give me an example of being an internet troll, somebody who's pressuring me into having a conversation.
Oh, I was at that example just the other day. Why don't you want to talk about this? Why you talking about the subject?
Okay, why don't you want to? And okay, that's good. Sort of projecting the expression that you should, unless there's something wrong with you, be willing to engage.
Yes.
Okay.
Blah blah blah. Prove me wrong.
Good. Prove me wrong. Okay, so setting up a challenge, like a Steven Crowder moment. Change my mind. I bring Steven Crowder up because he's the guy. If I'm out there doing SE, is like, wait, is this like a Steven Crowder thing? No, exactly the opposite in some very important ways.
I think saying something intentionally inaccurate, or at least perceived to be inaccurate by the other party, is a good troll. You know, like, and Trump does this all the time, right? This is how he walks the line, right? He'll say, you know, speaking about Mexicans crossing the border or whatever, he'll say, you know, they're not sending their best, like, and they're not sending anybody, of course. You know, they're not sending people, but he just says like a flurry of inaccuracies, and you feel compelled to address what's being said.
Apparently, we are free to deport people to Mexico, but is Mexico free to deport people to us? It's like weird. That's that whole thing. Sorry, gonna go down that road. Yeah, get a whole bunch of people talking. All right, and last, graceful exits. Can you give me some examples of ways to end a conversation that are positive rapport?
Xbox mute. Xbox mute.
I would say thank you for this conversation. I've really enjoyed the time. I'd love to talk with you further on another time for on this topic or one of the subtopics that we brought up.
I liked that I've seen a lot of Anthony's videos, and he'll say, you know, we should have another conversation about this sometime, you know, or whatever. And that makes it feel like they actually were appreciated and heard, and it's pretty cool.
If the reason I'm leaving is because they've made a big shift in their claim or a big shift in their confidence or something and whatnot, I'd say I'd like to leave it right there. And I really, if you think about this and you come to any conclusions, I want to hear back from you if it's available. Now, I'm doing a lot of stuff online, so it's really easy to get back to me. It's harder for people to get back to him,
right?
When he's out there on a walking trail. So my online stuff, I'm allowed to vamp a little harder. Any other examples? Thank you all for coming. This was enjoyable for me to prepare for and enjoyable for me to present, and I really enjoyed hearing from all of you, and that was a fun impression earlier. It was almost on. It was good. Thank you, family, for stepping up and filling the roles that were the rest of them. We will be having these book clubs on Wednesdays, same time, 1 p.m. Pacific time, and you can work out what that is for yourself. I will continue to need volunteers because there are dialogues throughout that we'll be reading from. And it'll be roughly in this format, unless I get a bunch of feedback from you to say, well, that sucked. We should do it this other way. And you should imagine everything. And I'll probably take you seriously and be willing to make changes. My expectation is that it will take us 6 weeks to get through at 1 chapter per. And I folded 1 into this because 1 is really just and if it takes longer, well, it takes longer. I don't want to try to go way over an hour. So if a chapter I have to break into 2, or for we compress 2 chapters into 1 session or something. So no guarantees that it will be 6. Right now, I think it might be 6.
Have you thought about putting
Uh,
together an email list, kind of same like what the schedule is and maybe what you're covering, so that we can read beforehand? I mean, I know you're talking about it right now, but for people who
Yep.
aren't here, do you have an email list?
I don't have an email list. We have the Collab SE server,
Right.
and I will put it out there. If somebody wants to create an email list, I don't object, and I will be happy to help out with it and make that work. I don't really know about setting up those kinds of things, and so if somebody would like to show me how to do it, I will probably just be happy to do that. And I will list. Okay, the real sample answer is this was 1 and 2. Next week will be 3. The next week will be 4 until we get through 7.
Right. Cool.
Following that, we will probably do the book, A Manual for Creating Atheists, but we'll figure that out in a month and a half. Any further conversation? Any further thoughts about it on the book or anything meta? Okay. Thank you all for coming. I couldn't do this without you. I wouldn't do this without you. Here are 5 of my favorite YouTube channels. There are actually just 5 of a much larger list that are promoted channels on my YouTube site, but 5 fit on the screen really. If you are really interested in this method of street epistemology, my favorite resource gathering place is the site streetepistemology.com, provided by Street Epistemology International, where they gather the resources that are generated by the community and put them all on this wiki, and there's a whole bunch of them. So this is the one-stop shopping place for all the kind of resources. You can get enough out of here, you don't even need to buy this orange book. Thank you all for joining me for this Study Group SE book club. And the book club will continue next week at the same time, the same place. Talk to you next week.
Very cool. Thank you for
If
hosting.
you would like, yes, thank you. And if you would like to be a guest on my show for these kinds of things or any of the other of my 8 categories that are all about street epistemology, my only requirements are that you be polite, articulate, willing to show your face, and willing to talk on any subject related to SE. I've got a category that'll probably fit your thing. So if you want to be, I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.